let's go to Chief Foreign Correspondent Trey Yingst, live for us in Tel Aviv with the latest on the Iran war. Trey.
Yeah, hey guys, good morning. The ceasefire is holding again with Iran as the region braces for what comes next. President Trump spoke after attending Game 3 of the NBA Finals between the Knicks and Spurs. The president indicated that negotiations toward a deal are ongoing. He also discussed his call with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu after the exchange of fire over the weekend.
We had a very good conversation, and he was hit, and he hit back, and I can't blame him for that, but he was hit, he hit back, and now they've called it quits, so they're gonna just leave each other alone for another week or something.
After President Trump called on Israel and Iran to stop shooting, both sides agreed. Since then, Israel has continued to operate against Iran-backed Hezbollah in Lebanon, launching new strikes overnight and issuing fresh evacuation orders this morning. Prime Minister Netanyahu addressed his country overnight with a message for Hezbollah.
In the past 24 hours, Iran and Hezbollah tried to impose a new equation on us. This equation is intolerable and unacceptable to me. They thought they could fire from Lebanese and Iranian territory at Israel, and that we would not act. That did not happen, and that will not happen.
With questions about if the ceasefire could be broken again, international attention remains on the Strait of Hormuz, where the U.S. naval blockade of Iranian ports is expected to continue. CENTCOM says U.S. forces disabled an unladen oil tanker in the Gulf of Oman on Monday after it tried to breach the blockade. An F/A-18 Super Hornet from the USS Abraham Lincoln fired a precision munition into the ship's engineering and steering rooms. Since the blockade went into effect, 134 vessels have been turned around and 7 disabled. Guys?
Hey, Trey, there are some reports that there are protests inside Iran right now that appear to be student-driven, and these students are upset over the Iranian education policy, so somewhat separate from the war, but linked in that these students are angry with their government. Are those protests still going on, to your knowledge, and if so, how significant are they?
Yeah, we understand there are some limited protests, but there is real fear among the civilian population of Iran because of the crackdown that took place earlier this year. President Trump says 42,000 people were slaughtered in the streets of their country when they went and demonstrated against the government in late December and early January. And the concern is that that crackdown could continue because many of those officials are still in power. Now, the United States and Israel hit many of the Basij and IRGC commanders in the strikes during Operation Epic Fury, but there is growing domestic pressure on the regime, in part due to this U.S. naval blockade that is crippling the Iranian economy.
Yeah, imagine how brave you have to be a student protester inside Iran right now. Trey Yingst, live for us in Israel. Trey, thank you so much. Now back to the Middle East and ongoing negotiations with Iran. Vice President J.D. Vance commenting on those talks and what the administration wants to see from Tehran.
Everybody's always trying to play everybody. I think the president's attitude on this is we have to verify, of course. One of the most important things to whether this ultimate settlement is a success is not what the Iranians write on the paper, but whether they actually comply with some of the requirements of the settlement that we come up to. The Iranians don't want this war to continue. It's not in their best interest. And I think they're coming to the table, putting some real things on the table. We're, of course, going to verify it. But if we get to this deal, it's going to be a home run win for the American people.
Former NSC Chief of Staff under President Trump, Alex Gray, joins us now. Alex, let's face it, the American people are war fatigued. 20 years Afghanistan, 4 months now in Iran. So to the average American watching us right now, what does a home run deal look like to them?
Well, it's a great question, and no one has been clearer in their opposition to these forever wars than Donald J. Trump. I think it's why Americans should trust him uniquely to come up with a deal that is a lasting, transformational deal in terms of our ability to never have to do something like this again. And that deal that would allow us to finally disengage from this region after 20 plus years would be an Iran that is not ever on the path to a nuclear weapon, a region that is not constantly terrorized by Iran's terror proxies, and where Iran is not able to close the Strait of Hormuz and shut off a significant chunk of the world's commercial maritime traffic. That is what a good deal looks like, and I think that is exactly the deal President Trump and Vice President Vance are pursuing.
When it comes to Iran's strategy right now, here's something from the Institute for the Study of War. They write, Iran has almost certainly observed discussions and leaks in Western media about the increasing tension between Trump and Netanyahu over Israeli strikes in Lebanon, and Trump's fears that Israeli action in Lebanon will cause U.S.-Iran negotiations to collapse, for example. Iran is already attempting to present itself as a reasonable actor in the most recent escalation, even though its ally Hezbollah started the escalation on June 7th. So the Institute for the Study of War's assessment is that Iran believes that President Trump wants a negotiated settlement as opposed to a renewed conflict and is trying to use that to their advantage. What's your take on that?
Well, of course, President Trump wants a negotiated settlement, but I think the president has shown throughout his time in office in both terms that he's never going to take force off the table. And the Iranian regime would be very foolish. It wouldn't surprise me, but it would be especially foolish for them to think the president was taking the force off the table. He's kept an exceptionally large and potent U.S. naval armada in the region. He has U.S. assets all around Europe and the Middle East. I think the president is more than willing to use the American big stick if he has to, but he certainly doesn't want to. And I think that's for the primary reason that the blockade that the U.S. Navy has imposed on Iran, as your reporter covered earlier, is bearing fruit. It is crushing the Iranian economy, and it is already leading to signs of social unrest that the regime is not going to be able to ignore much longer.
Okay, so the Washington Post also has a piece that looks deep into the future. And it makes a case that even if President Trump doesn't reach all of his declared objectives, he could still achieve real change in Iran. Here's the key line. The Washington Post op-ed writes, even with aid, Tehran's ability to manage its domestic woes will remain limited, and the internal pressures will build. They may not lead to the collapse of the regime, but they could produce what Khomeini greatly feared, the emergence of an Iranian Gorbachev, a leader who wants to prioritize domestic development, reach out to the public, and end confrontation with the outside world as organizing principles. What are your thoughts on the chances of something like that happening?
You know, I think it has a real chance of success for the simple reason that the Iranian regime is predicated on appearing strong and imposing to its own people, scaring its own people into submission. And Donald Trump has shown over the last several months that the regime in many ways has been a paper tiger for 47 years. The way the United States and Israel smashed its air defenses, destroyed its navy, put it to the bottom of the sea, the way they have taken off significant elements of the regime, eliminated targets from the first level of the regime on down, the missile program, on and on and on. This is a regime that has tried to scare its people into submission, and it can't even protect itself. That's the message President Trump has sent through his policy on Iran for the last couple of months, and I think the Iranian people are looking at this, and they're saying, this is the regime that has kept me in fear for 47 years. I think there's a lot less there. It's kind of a Wizard of Oz effect, frankly.
Yeah. Alex Gray, live for us this morning. Alex, thank you, as always, for your insight. Much appreciated.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.